Hello and welcome everyone. Imagine a man capable of orchestrating the world's biggest scams with nothing more than his intelligence, charm and audacity. That man is Victor Lustig. The name may not ring a bell, but he's a seasoned conman who has pulled off an enterprise as improbable as it is frightening, to swindle Al Capone, the legendary Chicago gangster. But what ingenious plan could he have devised to dupe one of the most feared criminals of his time? And above all, how did he navigate the tumultuous waters of organized crime to implement his scheme? In the minutes that follow, you'll plunge into a world where reality seems more incredible than fiction, a world where the boundaries between fact and fiction are constantly blurred. Without further ado, let's enter the world of illusion and discover the story of Victor Lustig, the man who swindled one of the world's most notorious criminals. We're off, and if you enjoy content like this, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and turn on all notifications so you don't miss our upcoming video. Before delving into one of history's most audacious swindles, the one in which Victor Lustig challenged Al Capone himself, it's essential to understand where this remarkable man came from, what shaped his path to the top of the con world. In fact, Victor Lustig was born on January 4, 1890, into an upper-middle-class family. From an early age, he displayed a keen intelligence, mastering at least 5 languages fluently. His successful and refined upbringing laid the foundations for his future as a genius conman. However, Lustig's path was not without its pitfalls. After completing his studies, he came up against the law, spending some time behind bars for minor offenses. Far from discouraging him, these early forays into the criminal world seemed to have whetted his appetite for cunning and manipulation, honing his skills as a budding swindler. In fact, before the outbreak of the First World War, Lustig discovered a lucrative line of business on the luxurious transoceanic liners. There, he practiced his cheating skills, exploiting wealthy, gullible passengers at the card game. This activity, which combined his taste for opulence with his ability to dupe, brought him a substantial source of income. However, the war brought an abrupt end to this era of prosperity, forcing Lustig to reinvent himself and seek new opportunities to put his criminal ingenuity to good use. So, in 1920, Lustig left for the United States. There, he proclaimed himself Count Victor Lustig. With a keen knowledge of people and an aristocratic bearing, he took his scams to a new level. He sold machines supposedly capable of printing banknotes and pretended to have inside information on horse racing, before absconding with his victims' money. These early successes not only established Lustig as a master swindler, but also laid the foundations for his future deceptions. Each scam, each deception, polished his skills, preparing him for the master stroke that would astonish the criminal world and beyond. And that master stroke would be none other than to challenge one of the most feared figures in the underworld, Al Capone. An emblematic figure of the Chicago Mafia, he was much more than just a criminal. He was a living legend, surrounded by an aura of fear and respect. Known for his uncompromising brutality, Al Capone ruled Chicago with an iron fist, directing a multifaceted criminal empire. It was against this tumultuous backdrop that Lustig, with his characteristic audacity, chose to approach the legendary criminal with a business proposition. This initiative marked the beginning of an extraordinary encounter between two of the most intriguing personalities of their time, the notorious gangster and the master swindler. Their interaction, woven of cunning and machinations, was to become a memorable chapter in the history of crime, highlighting Lustig's ingenuity in dealing with one of the most feared criminals of the day. And with good reason. Lustig's plan was based on subtle psychological deception. First, he approached Al Capone with a surprising request, a loan of $50,000, claiming to have a foolproof investment plan that would quickly double that sum. However, Lustig's real intention was not to invest the money. On the contrary, he aimed to create a singular situation to test the reaction of Al Capone, a man accustomed to navigating the murky waters of duplicity and betrayal. So, a month later, Lustig returned to Al Capone, not with a profit, but with the original $50,000, claiming that he hadn't met the expected investors. This unexpected move caught Al Capone off guard. Accustomed to a world where deception and trickery are commonplace, Lustig's approach seemed almost foreign, even admirable. Surprised by this apparent frankness, which contrasted with usual practices, Al Capone was both amused and impressed, decided to reward Lustig with $5,000 for what he saw as a rare display of integrity. Ironically, this reward was precisely what Lustig had anticipated. His maneuver had not been to earn money through a successful investment, but to gain Al Capone's trust and admiration. This strategy paid off, because in the end, Lustig succeeded in swindling one of the most notorious criminals of his time. But Lustig's story doesn't end there. In fact, it takes an even more spectacular turn. After his success with Al Capone, he heads for Paris, the city of love, light and, for him, the next big thing. Settling into the opulence of his room at the Hotel de Crillon, Lustig found his inspiration in a newspaper article about the French government's difficulties in maintaining the Eiffel Tower. The journalist's phrase, "Will we have to sell the Eiffel Tower?" ignited a spark in Lustig's mind. Transforming himself into a government official, he then concocts an impressive stratagem: sell the Eiffel Tower for its scrap metal. Armed with remarkable ingenuity, Lustig sends personalized invitations to the 5 biggest scrap metal salvage companies, inviting them to a secret meeting at the Hotel de Crillon. In the hushed atmosphere of this luxury hotel, Lustig, with his dignified air, explains that the tower, now a burden on the state, must be discreetly demolished and sold. Pursuing his plot with unparalleled skill, Lustig organizes a visit to the Eiffel Tower, turning the outing into a convincing demonstration of his plan. With a cleverly forged minister's card, he passes through the checkpoints without arousing suspicion, adding a layer of veracity to his tale. Among the captivated scrap dealers, André Poisson stands out, seduced by the unique opportunity presented to him. At a later meeting, Lustig, sensing Poisson's vulnerability, subtly plays on the bribery angle, suggesting that a discreet tip could greatly facilitate their agreement. This strategy pays off. Lustig pulls off the unthinkable and sells the Eiffel Tower to Poisson, marking one of the greatest feats of deception of the era. Predictably, when the deal was completed, Lustig vanished with the money, leaving Poisson to realize, too late, that he'd been duped. Poisson's shame even prevents him from alerting the authorities, allowing Lustig to remain in the shadows. However, Lustig's appetite for risk brings him back to Paris for a second round. But this time, his plan hits a snag. A potential buyer, more suspicious than Poisson, sees through the deception. When he alerts the police, Lustig has to make a hasty escape from Paris, closing a spectacular chapter in his incredible career as a swindler. Nevertheless, after this episode in Paris, Lustig continued to indulge in various swindles, albeit with increased discretion. His activities took place mainly in the USA, where he resumed his scams, exploiting people's credulity with other ingenious schemes. In particular, he pursued fraudulent sales and other scams involving valuables. Lustig kept a relatively low profile, avoiding the attention of the authorities for some time. He continued to use his skills of manipulation and persuasion to seduce his victims, remaining true to his sophisticated, well-planned style of swindling. However, even the most skillful swindler cannot escape justice indefinitely. Thus, Lustig's criminal career, marked by multiple identities and numerous arrests without conviction, came to an end when he was finally caught by the law. By then, he had accumulated some 24 different identities and no fewer than 47 arrests. His 48th arrest was the turning point in his career as a swindler. Accused of counterfeiting, Lustig was imprisoned in New York. On the eve of his trial, in a desperate bid for freedom, he made a spectacular escape by fashioning a rope from his bedsheet. His freedom was short-lived, however, as 27 days later he was arrested again in Pittsburgh. It was then on December 5, 1935, that Lustig's trial took place, sealing the fate of the notorious swindler. He was then sentenced to 15 years imprisonment and shipped off to Alcatraz prison in California, a fortress reputed to be impenetrable and reserved for the most hardened criminals. There, isolated from the outside world and deprived of his conning tools, Lustig spent his final days. Indeed, on March 9, 1947, after several years at Alcatraz, Lustig contracted pneumonia. And 2 days later, he succumbed to the disease at the U.S. Federal Prison Medical Center in Springfield. His death marked the end of an era, that of one of the most ingenious and audacious con men the world has ever known. In conclusion, the life of Victor Lustig is a fascinating tale that traverses the criminal history of the 20th century. His career, marked by rare ingenuity and audacity, remains engraved in the collective memory as an example of intelligence turned to the art of swindling. From his first transatlantic liner scams to the incredible sale of the Eiffel Tower, Lustig demonstrated an exceptional ability to manipulate and deceive. His confrontation with Al Capone and his incarceration at Alcatraz are highlights of this epic story. Even in his downfall, Lustig embodies the figure of the romantic swindler, whose exploits continue to fuel the legends of organized crime. His story, spanning eras and continents, will forever remain a singular chapter in the yearbook of organized crime.